Time for the match everyone has been waiting for. It's the Telecom Wars, KT Rolster versus SKT, and this is going to be a good one.
Yeah, guys, if you have not told your friends, do it now. Spread the word on Twitter. This is the match everybody wants to watch, the main one from every single round. The Telecom Wars is the biggest rivalry here in Korea in multiple platforms, multiple games, and we have it here tonight for round number one.
And even though just before this, SK was tied for first and KT was in last, this is, like you said, by far still the biggest rivalry. Sick lineup of players, a very even roster today, I feel personally. I think this could go either way. KT needs to bring their A game today, though, because they have not shown it so far. 0-2 down there with the worst indicator at the bottom is not where you want to be if you're last year's champion.
Yep, really rough start for these guys here. You do see it on screen, 0-2. -4. They still have a super powerful lineup, just overall not showing the greatest games. All of these players pretty much for KT so far.
Well, here is SKT with a completely revamped lineup. And you can see they've got, some new faces, a lot of old faces missing. Billowy in that lineup as well. Now, Stats versus soO of PVZ to start things off. And this is a pretty controversial one. A lot of people are saying soO's got this, but some people are saying, he's slumping a little bit these days. Stats looking a lot more consistent, and they favor him. This one is just one of many matches today that really could, in my opinion, go either way. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
This match is so tense.
Absolutely. Myself, I would go for soO here. I do feel like Stats overall hasn't shown the greatest matches in the beginning of Pro League so far, but once again, it definitely could go either way. soO's slumping a bit as well, and I don't know. But this first game is incredibly important, especially in a rivalry. Emotions are high. The first game gives you so much momentum. That second player, look at a guy like Billowy. He hasn't had the greatest results, but he's starting to play a little bit better at a time, where Zest is slumping a bit as well. Let's say soO wins the first game. Billowy could easily take that second one over Zest.
Yeah, definitely a good point to mention. Action just trying to put his Coke there on the camera for a second. That's not even a Coke. I don't know what that is.
Looks like black bean tea.
Yeah. There's Classic on the right side, putting his hair back to blonde, looking just ready to go today. Is not actually set to play today, oddly enough, which is something a lot of people were confused about because, instead of Billy, most people would expect Classic to be the player to come out on Deadwing. But with their shuffled roster, losing Parting, losing Rain, they've got to make some tough choices. Now let's talk a little bit more in depth about these matchups. We talked about Stats versus soO already. Look at those arrows. Those look pretty legit. Some of the arrows we've been having these days, not so much, but these arrows, I think they're pretty indicative of where these two players are at right now.
Yeah, the map will be Overgrowth. Part of their reason why I also favor soO on this map as well. But going into the second one, it's Zest versus Billowy on Deadwing. A very big map for a PvP. Could go very interesting on that one. Zest has shown some interesting play against players that he feels in a big advantage against.
Yeah.
Some unnecessary proxying. We've seen it before against Billy in the playoffs.
Cannot believe Dark has a down arrow. Played incredibly well recently. He did lose a match as well, but I feel like at least he should have the same arrow as Billy here. Flash's down arrow absolutely warranted. He has been looking terrible recently. He's been looking way off form. But both TY and Innovation looking strong, and that's going to be a great TVT on Catalina.
Yeah,
and Foxtrot Labs will be the ace match if we end up at this. Look at the record between these two rivaling teams. 6-8, very evenly matched. These guys were both in the finals. KT now in 8th place, but they won last season, and they've got a lot to prove today.
Yeah, this team, even though they have a bad start, it doesn't mean that they're not going to finish, up near the top. They could definitely come back, even win 6 games in a row. They could start it today. Who knows? They've got the lineup to do it. As long as the players show up today and they have practice for this, I'm sure they will do well. But guys, we are going to jump into an interview now with our coaches and Ayul.
KT와 SKT 감독님 만나보겠습니다. 안녕하세요.
네, 안녕하세요.
네.
Usually a lot of trash talk between these two.
좋았는데 올 시즌 초반 분위기가 조금 안 좋습니다. 아까 대기실에서 선수분들이
Last season, you guys performed very well, but this season, you're not performing quite the same. Not that well.
12시간씩 연습해야 된다고. 그리고 또 어떤 선수께서는 우리 왜 이렇게 못해 막 이러면서 사투리를 쓰셨거든요.
He told the players that in the back locker room that if they lose today, they're going to have to practice 12 hours a day
맞아요.
and really hit
그랬어요.
the
그래서
books there,
약간
hit the
주눅든
computers.
모습을 보였는데
As if they weren't
선수분들 많이
practicing
혼내지
12 hours a
않았나요?
day. It's crazy.
그렇지 않고요. 이번에는 많이 다독여졌고 그리고 선수들이 열심히 준비했기 때문에 그거를 오늘 보여드리려고 많이 참았던 것 같고 오늘 좋은 모습 많이 보여드릴게요.
I didn't say much to the players.
KT
I
선수들의
just
멋진
tried to give
모습
them
기다리겠습니다.
confidence. And they actually
수영장
prepared
눈이
a
너무 크신 거
lot
아닙니까?
for today's
목이
match,
너무
and he
아파요,
believes in his
사실.
players today.
매번 목이 너무 아픈데 네, 오늘 예상 스코어가 궁금합니다.
So she's really curious what his prediction for today's score is.
항상 그냥 애결 생각하고 오고요. 쉽게
So they're always considering playing the ace match when they come to the studio. They always keep that in mind.
두 배가 돼서 항상 애결 생각하고 오고 있습니다.
그럼 오늘 3대2 예상하시는 건가요?
So they're just thinking about 3-2. So you're thinking so confidently going to this match. Will you be more shocked by the loss if you lose? And he says that's in fact the reason why he always considers the ace match, because he doesn't want our team to take too much shock from losing. The KT coach really wants to get a 3-0 victory today, he says as well, of course, for their indicator. And the studio is getting pretty packed in here with these telecom wars coming in.
Yeah, man. More people filing in by the second, just getting more packed and more packed. You guys get a pretty good shot there of the lower floors, but of course we got our newly reformed upper floor as well with seats now.
Yeah, some really nice
crazy.
ones up there as well, really comfortable. Most people upstairs want to crowd at the front of those things, get that best shot of the TV, and I absolutely don't fault them for that. But just going into this matchup, like we said before, insanely close. Every single match today, could really go either way. KT looking a little bit out of form, but they brought their A-game players. They just need to actually perform today, which is, I personally feel, been the problem for them in the past two matches they played. They had a great lineup. They had a great lineup for the maps.
Yeah.
Well, the players just made mistakes or did not perform.
I think maybe today is the day that KT has prepared the most for so far in Pro League for this season. And I would not be surprised to see a huge breakout performance from them today and have them ride that wave and just keep practicing and really preparing for all the matches in the future, because I feel like the matches before, they just looked unprepared, not ready. They were coming out on maps and they had ideas for what they were going to do, but they were just not executing the builds well enough. They were just barely losing games, and that kind of thing goes back to the practice room. And we heard a bit about that from the KT coach.
Yep.
Guys, we're about to get this started. Introducing our first player from KT, it's Stats.
Stats, 15-8 versus Zerg. A matchup he is insanely confident in. He loves his air game. He loves his late game Tempest that he can get there. Overgrowth, absolutely a map I put him on if I didn't want to put him on Sejong. Either one of those maps I feel would have been a great choice for him, because he's likely to face a Zerg on either of those two maps. And you can see his win streak is much better than his loss streak. This guy does not streak on loss. If he takes a loss, he's able to bounce back every time right afterwards. Never even lost twice in a row ever. So, insanely good player. Has really come into his own, I feel, in individual leagues just recently, doing well at the end of 2014. I feel like this could be Stats' year. He may be one of these new up-and-coming players, just like we saw from Zest last year.
Could definitely be, but introducing our second player for the first match, it's soO. He has a 50% win ratio here at Pro League, and he is 10-13 against Protoss. Not his best matchup here, but again, this guy, he's been multiple finalists for many tournaments. He's been so close so many times, but that's consistency. This guy's been at the top, but nowadays, not quite at his top performance.
Yeah, been slumping. Got a long losing streak there, as you guys can see. And he's just not been qualifying for these top-tier tournaments like everyone was expecting him to. That consistency, is it fading away? That's what everyone wants to know. Well, map number one. It's going to be a map that Zerg's like. soO chooses it here. So does Stats. Perhaps expecting to face him or Dark. Let's find out who can take that first one and take the momentum in this Telecom Wars.
Up here in the top right in the red, the Protoss player for KT, it is Stats.
And down to the bottom left, in the blue, it's soO. And there's the angry Zerg. So when he starts to lose, or if he gets behind in the series, gets pretty pumped up in there. However, in a best of one, you don't have that extra time, that extra momentum building here.
soO spamming up to 600 APM. Pretty crazy. We were talking about getting ready for this matchup. That's one way to do it. Get yourself warmed up by spamming those keys. 600 APM is a lot, even if you are spamming.
Yeah, that it is. Dropping down now to about 350, but still keeping those hands warm. Stats, on the other hand, actually not spamming as much as you guys could see. So, wow. Used to be a KT fan. Looks like he's moving over to the SK side, man. And I guess that's his Twitter. You guys could follow him. He has a Grandmaster logo, man. I think he's GM.
Could be.
Well, let's just take a look at these openings. We have an in-bane pylon for Stats. And he hasn't sent a probe across, so no cannoning to be going on. But just for safety, we see a pool first for soO.
Wow. And on the opposite side of things, we do have a Nexus first from Stats. Just teching a bit first. And then he is going to put that Nexus down. So it's going to be a bit annoying. The Zerglings will get over to the base quite quickly here. It's going to be annoying to, just micro around those. It's going to be in your main base, just running around. Going to be hard to get rid of them. But he will definitely get ahead here in economy by going for that. Even adding a gateway right after. This is a very greedy economic build from Stats. And if soO does nothing to punish it, he can definitely be behind.
Yeah, well, what's cool about this for Stats is the gate gives him the power of tech much faster, and he already has the economic advantage with the Nexus first. So 6 links here is a lot, and he needs to absolutely get something done with those. With the gate, of course, in the main base, might be able to get in there, force some probes off the line, force a little bit of run around, and 6 much better than 4 for doing that. And I think he just kind of senses what's going on, and now his Overlord confirms at the front. He saw a late scout, so he knew, okay, this is probably just going to be a Nexus first opening. Definitely no cannoning to worry about. And the probe, you confirm the Lings are heading across the map. Starts a Zealot here right away, and he's going to rush that out.
From soO. Sometimes we see Zergs respond to this by just throwing down a third base immediately, trying to catch up in economy. But soO, when he sees this, he's the type of player to actually jump on the Protoss and say, oh, no, you're not going to get away with that. I'm going to try to punish you. And early Zergling speed could be the way to do it. Some Roaches could be the way to do it. Put on that aggression. That's soO's game.
Well, first few probes already off the line here. 6 Lings, such a big annoyance to deal with. With just 4, you can kill it with the Zealot if the Lings don't micro perfectly. But with 6 Lings, you need that second Zealot. You need a few probes off the line momentarily. Something you can absolutely afford, considering that he got that fast Nexus. And he has the Mothership Core on the way to help deter this as well. And it looks like soO just wants to see if he can grab a transferring probe. There's nothing there to hit. He's just going to keep lurking around.
Even Stats very smart to send that probe from the natural just into the main base. Keep it safe. He doesn't want it to die. And Zergling speed is the choice here. And once again, because he does not have a wall complete at the front just yet, that speed can be very annoying.
He leaves 1 only mining in the gas back at home, so that gives him some follow-up potential, but definitely gets his minerals boosted here for a moment. Stats almost able to block here, but just barely misses the chance.
Yeah, and I think he didn't see that drone. I think maybe saying like, uh-oh, I got to prepare for something, make a sentry. Let's start getting defensive, because he did not see that third base. He didn't see a drone coming his way either. And he may be saying, okay, soO's not going to go economically here. He's going to actually try to punish me. Let me go back home and try to defend.
That's a great catch there, Valdez, on the sentry, because that is going to delay any sort of tech that he wants to put out here off his core. And with no gates going up just yet, okay, there's the first, second. Will we see a third? Those are at the wall, so it could just be 3 gates in total, not the 4 gate. And I think that's a smart choice, considering that the 4th gate's not really going to line up well for a timing because of the warp gate research. It's so ahead here, it's going to be finished too early to hit with that first round he would like to do. And, okay, just going to move across the map and poke a little bit, try to force Lings, and then tech and take the third base at home.
3 gates, always a, not the most pressure you can put on as a Protoss, but just a little bit of pressure. Just try to be annoying. We do see soO responding by making a bunch of lings. They're not too many. I think it was like 6 or 8 extra. He's also adding that Rotoran just in case. Do see 6 gates, though. As I am saying that, in the moment, he is actually going to transition right into a very aggressive build, and soO needs to figure this out fast.
I think it's partially due to the fact that Pylon at the 3 o'clock was unscouted. His probe was unscouted. He knew the Lings only saw the 2 gates at the front. But here comes that Overlord into the main. Good gateway placement here. Can those sentries actually tickle the Overlord out? He decides not to. He decides he just needs to go. The Overlord's not going to the path that's going to see this immediately. So it's better for him to actually,
drones.
Instead of showing the sentries, which is like, oh my god, why would you pull all your sentries to kill this Overlord? You must have something to hide. He's just going to go. He's going. The pylon is up. The second pylon is up. And like you said, those drones just got made. He's got, no larva on the map right now. He just spends the last of it on 7 roaches. More and more pylons going up here. He knows he's got a great opportunity with this. Moving across so many sentries in this mix. He's got 8 sentries. And a Mothership core with plenty of energy. 3 spines coming down as well. He's starting to panic here.
These are emergency spines. He's desperately going to try to hold this off, but I'm not sure. We do have 7 roaches coming out. 2 more on the way, but that is so many sentries, and now he's focusing down some spine crawlers. Some of these force fields coming out even early now. This is going to be so hard to hold off.
And he loses the Overlord, which makes him supply blocked as well. The hatch is starting to take a lot of damage. He's using the hatchery again here against soO, trying to use it also as a blocker. Some great force fields, isolating about 5 or 6 roaches here away from the pack. He can continue to warp in with all those gates. He's actually making more and more sentries here, knowing the power of these force fields. Without roach speed, it's going to be even harder to hold this. And again, trapping more and more roaches. There's an overwhelming amount of Protoss right now. He's just fighting these units one by one. A time warp ensures these units cannot escape. And that spine crawler trying its best to help out against these sentries, but it just appears to be too little, too late.
He's trying to get out as many roaches as possible. He may have to sack his third base. There are so many Protoss units at the moment. He's trying to get us around, even with drones now in the mix, but consistent warp-ins out of stats. He's got so many units on the front doorstep of soO right now. But again, a lot of force fields have been used. He is going to have to back off, warp some more sentries in. Can soO hold this off? That's the question.
Well, he's going to have to warp in Zealots, he feels, here, because he doesn't have a lot of gas. And this is a problem because it's a almost purely roach army he's dealing with here. There was one moment where a few Lings got through, and that was kind of the turning point here for soO to maybe try to turn this around. Again, great force fields, though, picking off roaches one by one. Several of these roaches are actually in the red. They're almost dead, including that one that just got popped right there. Now he's built up enough resources he feels he can make those stalkers, which may be what he needs to seal the deal. Down goes the hatch, which is going to limit production, and again, cuts 3 roaches off from the pack. And sentries, they don't have a lot of damage on their own, but they do have a lot of burst damage against small numbers of roaches. They get isolated like this.
That they do. And like you were saying before, just adding stalkers and more stalkers, that is so much DPS in the mix. Now the third base is down. That's going to take the larva away from that. He does have a lair, and he does have all these roaches. But again, on 2 base versus 2 base Protoss with 8 gates back at home, it's really hard to hold it off from here, man.
Roaches do not have speed. Sentries are starting to rebuild their energy. And all he needs is good force fields here. soO almost was able to hold this off, but losing the hatch means not a lot of production. Great force fields here again, fighting a small number of roaches, most of them stuck at the back. And soO losing just too much momentum here. 2 more spines on the way. Even if he holds on 2 base, he could come back. He's trying to break through. The right side is exposed. More reinforcing stalkers, though. Sentries being targeted here by those spine cores. Nicely done.
And now these Zerglings pushing through. He's trying to fight with the drones. Even Queen's getting into the mix, but more and more Warpins are coming his way. He's got a lot of tanking power in this mix, but soO is losing so much.
That he is. He is able to pull this off for now. He holds it. Pushes this back. It's going to force another round of Warpins. It's coming to the right side. This indicator of confidence, indicator of, okay, I'm starting to hold this off, is shown on the production tab. You guys can't see it, but roach speed is on the way. And that means he's like, you know what? I might be able to hold this. For just 1 second, I can breathe. I can get that roach speed. I've got a lot of queens here. They do a lot of DPS, and they've got a lot of transfuses.
And no more force fields here. It's pretty much only stalkers. He's got 2 sentries that he just warped in. He's having trouble with that gas, like you did mention. He does have the 4 gases back at home now, so he will be trying to make more sentries. But again, that's a lot of stalkers, a lot of gas. And soO is holding it off, but at what cost? He's got 27 drones, no third base. But if he can hold this back, like you said, he can gain some breathing room.
Yeah, if he can hold this off, even on 2 bases, he might be able to get a third up. you know, and continue this game. This is fairly all in here for Stats. Force Field's going down, but he doesn't have a whole lot of them. It's helping him out, though. Gets a few Roaches trapped here, but those Zealots at the front are fodder for the Roaches.
Yeah, man. Sick micro here out of soO, just backing off, not fighting the fights that he can win, fighting the ones that he can. And he's just continuing to hold this off. This is a hugely long push right now.
Roach Speed's almost done, and 2 more Queens popping out here for those extra transfuses and that extra range DPS. All right, few more sentries warped in. These Force Fields are so key right now. Ling's at the front to tank the damage. Roach in the back, wiping the Zealots. Are there too many Stalkers, though, Valdez? Most of these Stalkers actually still at full hit points. The Roach is trying to break through. Those Queens in the back again with so much extra DPS.
Look at that many Queens. 8 Queens in the back could just barely hold this off. All of the transfuses keeping just a small amount of Roaches alive here. And even though another warp in of 6-7 units from the Protoss did come in during that fight, it may not be enough. This is such a long fight for now, but it's the Queens that are keeping soO in this one.
These Roaches are all so low in hit points, but they keep getting transfused. The Queens transfuse each other as well. And this has been pushed back. This has been held for now. If he loses these warp-ins, he loses the potential to continue to reinforce. It's also going to be expensive for him. He's going to need to make pylons at home once all of these get eliminated. This Robo, the sign that he's going to try to come back and transition out of this. Let's talk about worker counts. 43 probes to 27 drones. That's a big issue. If he holds with full saturation on 2 base, if he holds with, you know, a similar amount of drones that Stats has, it's easier for him to transition. But if he has a weak economy, every unit that he loses like this on the line of sight blocker, for example, really hurts, because it means that Stats, with this huge worker count, can make some Immortals to hold and take a 3rd base. If he gets a 3rd base up with the worker count he has, soO is going to be massively behind. They can't be taking 3rd bases at the same time of each other. That's not how this matchup works for the Zerg player. The Zerg player needs to be ahead in bases.
Yep, and at this moment in time, we could see Stats take that 3rd base, but also he could just go for a follow-up push. He's making the Forge right now. Could go for +1. He's making a bunch of Immortals in this mix as well. And soO back at home, he's forced to drone up here heavily. He's forced to get that 3rd base up.
That's a great move here, by the way, to block the Nexus with that creep. That's going to deny it even a little bit. And he could already start working on spreading his creep a million different directions with all the Queens he's got. This is not an engagement soO wants to take right now, though. Worker count so low that, like you said, he's forced to drone, which means his army gets weaker for a brief amount of time.
Funnily enough, he didn't actually go as heavy on the drones as I thought he would. He's actually trying to put on some aggression. He's even adding a Hydra Den right now and getting the +1 to the ranged attacks. Whereas still no 3rd base here for Stats. He's making a really strong army. He's making a bunch of sentries as well as a Warp Prism. He's getting the +1.
Looks like he's just going to go for phase 2. He knows the production is severely hurt. And when you're this far behind in workers, you either have to make a ton of units as much as you can and try to do an all-in, which his unit comp is pretty solid against, or you have to drone, which means you're not going to have enough units to hold the next wave. He also didn't have all that production. All that larva was missing from the 3rd base as well. And Stats is starting to run low on money in the main base, so he needs to make this happen pretty fast. Hydra's count's getting higher and higher. You know, his first few are coming out right now. Is going to go up to 9. It will have +1. He has 9 Queens as well to help transfuse those, as well as the Roaches. The more Hydras he can get out, the better his chance of winning here.
It seems like the response out of soO right now is he wants to come from 2 angles. He's got the Hydras and all the Queens back at home. He's making a bunch of Lings as well for the tank, but he's trying to come from the back at the same time with all his Roaches and the Lings. He could easily go for a counterattack, but he wants to crush this army once and for all.
You're absolutely right, man. He wants to set up that flank. The Queens to tank over here, actually, funnily as it is, with all those transfuses they have, they can repair each other a lot. One Hydra does get sniped, but Queen with a ton of energy goes down as well. Forces are going to block that reinforcing army, and the Roaches just don't quite have the range to actually fight this. The Queen's being caught up on the right side, and Hydra's dying little by little. They need to have something to tank for them. They need to have something at the front to do their extra damage from behind, and it looks like soO is just going to fall apart here. Force field's too good, and that's how this story ends.
You know, he was trying to fight at the back with the Roaches, but the Immortals were in perfect position behind the force fields to just kill multiple amount of Roaches. He was not able to fight with his whole army. This is all about the positioning right now for Stats. He's consistently able to get out a huge number of units, even though he doesn't have mining in his main base anymore. He's got this army. If soO could possibly kill this army once and for all, he may be able to stay in this game, but that's not an easy feat, man.
No, it's definitely not, man. Drones coming off the line now as well here. From that left side, he's got a few more force fields to deny them. The army on the right side is getting crushed. It's just not the right comp here anymore. A great follow-up here from Stats, deciding not to take the third base, recognizing his opponent's awkward economic situation, and just punishing him for it. And that is going to steal the deal here. Stats even bringing mana probes from the main base. And he is going to close out game one, taking the momentum away from SKT here. Queen's desperately trying to do something. The Warp Prism, they're floating. GG.
Stats takes it, man. He adds to that incredible PVC record. Goes up to 16-8, a 66% win ratio. And this guy, he brings the first win now for KT Rolster. One of the most important wins in these telecom wars.
Getting all the high fives. A great build, strong opening, delayed gateway push. His opponent didn't scout it until late. I like that he decided not to deny that Overlord scout with the sentries and just move across the map instead. Force fields were solid. And it's that second where soO made a ton of drones, like 10, 12 drones, set of units that gave him that extra momentum, because then your force fields are insanely good. Force fields are great against any Zerg army, but the smaller Zerg army means that you can actually do so much more with them, and you can start to snowball. When you start to snowball too much, you kill too many of the hit points in the hatchery. Hatchery falls. Hatchery falls means less larva, less drones, less economy, and then the Protoss, on 2 bases even, until that first base mines out, could just warp in so many Stalkers with 4 gas.
Yeah. I can't help but think what would happen if soO actually went for a counterattack. There were no units back there. The Mothership Core was with the army of Stats. Could have actually tried to force a base trade, because the positioning of Stats' army up that ramp with all of those sentries is just so hard to fight into. soO thought